But I would actually say covering these stories has made me more empathetic as a person, which is what you would think the opposite would be. You think you'd get used to it, but it's done the opposite for me. There's very rarely an evil genius out there. A lot of times, it's not that they don't get caught, but it's also then later on looked that they do get caught also. I'd say the majority of my stuff gets monetized. I don't try to curse too much. I don't like getting into grisly details. I think the fact that I've got a pretty consistent upload schedule does help.
Mike, you are a storyteller, you're a talker in the best possible way. When somebody has that skill, you could do virtually anything with it.
I always just try and tell my stories like I'm telling friends over a beer, like in the bar, or down the pub. I just want to tell the stories like I was just talking to a regular person.
Hey, welcome to the Create Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. It is TCU's Day. We are here live on Discord every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern. I am Kevin Lieber, and with me, as always, is Matthew Tabor.
Yeah, and we've got to announce the upcoming episode with us, right? We've conspired to talk to each other and to the community one more time.
We have conspired to talk to each other.
That's right.
Yes, our marriage counselor has suggested that perhaps we talk to each other, once every 2 months or so.
You literally left me high and dry on Valentine's Day.
I did.
Charles Kahn was an excellent substitute, but that's not a healthy relationship.
It's not. And I'm going to try to rectify that with you next week, but not this week. This week we have an excellent guest. Next week, I guess we could try to get into the minutia of our failing relationship.
That's right. Yeah, well, two things really, really quickly. I wanted to shoot a quick congratulations out to Jeff Strife from the Discord. Jeff's been with the Baby Gang since day one. And I believe he was actually
Baby number one, I think.
Ganger number one. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. But he got a significant, promotion and everything at work. And I just want to say, this is what we really like to see over a period of years is people working hard, doing their thing, and then telling us about their good news. Jump in the Discord, tell us about the good things happening for you. And it can be significant, and it can be like, my cat didn't throw up this morning. Well, that's a win too. It doesn't matter. Tell us the good things. And the other one is to producer Ben. He's got a band. He's been succeeding on the music scene. It's actually kind of shocking. He's made a few bucks playing, sold a lot of tickets to his last show. And yeah, I think he's looking at doing some more shows in the region in April. That's another thing where, 3-4 years ago, he's having a good time playing the bass, and, that evolves. And it's just so cool to see the projects that people work on become real and become significant. So congratulations to those two, and to anybody else who's had good things happen. Again, drop in and tell us about them.
Real quick, I just look forward to the day of being snubbed by Ben when he's a big rock star, because that's coming. It's part of the arc of a rock star, is to kind of poo-poo the people of your past because they're lesser than you now. And I look forward to being lesser than Ben.
Yes. Yeah, the best we can look forward to is having that Pete Best, like, fifth Beatle status. Maybe we can squeeze some juice out of him when that comes around.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of making the things you like, imagine making the thing you like over and over and being guaranteed that 1 million people will enjoy it every time. That is life for Mike O of That Chapter. And he bangs out million view videos more reliably than virtually anyone who we follow. And we followed him for a long time. It's actually been an appropriate form of stalking. Because his approach to crime storytelling stands out in an extremely saturated market. Mike's content has evolved from straightforward titles and thumbnails like The Disturbing Case of Douglas Garland, The Sinister Case of the Harrison Family, to intriguing, impossible to scroll past teasers. 3 hours ago, he dropped Partying Before Committing an Evil Crime That Shocked the Country, which had 4,000 views in its first 7 minutes, adding on to the 650 million he's racked up in the last few years. Crime stories are inherently interesting, and you'd think that means it's content on easy mode. It is not. It is counterintuitively difficult, and perhaps the most difficult part of YouTube, because it really lays bare a creator's storytelling skills. And that's where Mike's videos live or die. And they all live because he has perfected a balance of authority, information, and just plain hanging out. It doesn't matter what the topic is for the next That Chapter, YouTube videos, or his new podcast. Because Mike is Mike. You're going to spend 30 minutes with a friend who knows things that you don't, and who wants you to know them too. It's a bingeable road trip playlist from New York to Chicago, because Mike is a seductive amalgam of Ireland and North America. It's like sitting in a South Boston pub at 10 a.m., dipping your soda bread in a Guinness with a bar fight behind you as the uilleann pipes wail the hare's lament. There's one place to get this on YouTube, and it's That Chapter. So, Mike, we got to get right to it. How would you murder someone and get away with it?
Wow, what a question to start. First of all, Matthew, do you want me to give you the money for that now or later? Because that's like the best intro. That'll never be topped. Man, I don't know how I would murder somebody. The thing is, I just know I'd be caught because I cannot keep my mouth shut. That's the thing. Doing these cases, you see the same things over and over again, and it's your DNA and your phone, and that's it. You're done. You're donezo, my friend. I'm telling you. That's what interests me the most
often.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what interests me the most about doing true crime. It's why people are driven to do these crazy, insane, and despicable acts. Like, it's always what would drive you to murder? Let me ask you that.
Oh boy. I think I told the story about having a moment where, so my cat showed up years ago when I was smoking bacon, and he never left. That's how I got my cat. About 2 years after that, a guy came to drop off something for my brother, and the cat was on the porch, and he's like, oh, so he lives here now. And in that moment, I swear to God, time got so slow. It was like listening to a sports person be like, oh, in the moment, I took the jump shot and just everything was slow motion. Well, that was slow motion for me, because I thought, if he wants his cat back, like, what am I going to do to stop this? And it was going to go to, like, nothing was off the table with it. And I had 2 Tomahawks on top of the smoker that they just happened to be there.
As you do.
I remember looking at those and just thinking, like, whatever has to happen here is going to happen, because Piglet is my life.
Shit's going down. I mean, I would have just said, not using your indicators. But you've got a whole scenario planned out with Tomahawks at already. I like that. I was just going to go with,
that was an accident.
Why 2?
Kevin, do you have a...
Wait, no, hold on. We're not leaving this topic. Why 2 Tomahawks? Like, 1 Tomahawk was not enough?
No, I was throwing them at a stump. And
nice.
It started to rain the day before, and so I just left them on the porch, when I came in from the rain, and so they still happened to be there.
Okay.
I mean, you need 2, because what if you lose one?
Right.
Well, you need 2, because otherwise you're walking to the stump and pulling it out every single time you throw. So if I have 2, at least I can cut down on the worst part of
2 throws.
Tomahawk throws.
Can you dual Tomahawk? Do throw 2 at the same time?
You're not supposed to throw them at all in terms of irregular warfare, I suppose you'd call it. Because you just don't separate yourself from the weapon unless you absolutely have to. Once that's out of your hand, it is completely and totally useless to you. If it hits its mark, that's awesome. If it doesn't, you're left without a weapon. So axe throwing and stuff like that people are so into, it's really a fun, contrived, pastime, as opposed to being something other than what you see in a movie. It's not all that useful. It's also really hard.
Yeah, well, it looks hard. It looks cool as shit, though. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
It's really hard to get the blade to land where you want, because it's rotating kind of so slowly. To have the blade hit the thing you want it to hit requires very precise timing. So awesome in movies, though. Yeah. Anyway, Kevin, why are you going to kill? Why are you killing, Kevin?
No.
Or why did you kill in the past?
Oh, geez. Well, that's a different podcast. But for this podcast, what I really wanted to say on this topic is that, first of all, We've been watching a lot of Forensic Files. Cold Case Files first, went through all of those, and then have been going through, like, I don't know, 13 seasons of Forensic Files or something. There are a lot of episodes, almost done with them. Yeah. And here's my takeaway, okay? And then I wanted to throw this at both of you. I actually think it seems really easy to get away with murder. Like, I cannot believe in how many of these cases there was some miraculous piece of trace evidence that they found where it was like, this fabric could only come from this weird, like, Sesame Street sweatshirt that was made by J.C. Penney in like 1991 for like 8 weeks. It was only available through this catalog. It's like, that is an insane thing that had to happen for the person to get caught. Like, and there have been. I will also say at the same time, there have been a bunch of episodes where someone was convicted with like no evidence, and that's really scary. The people that have been convicted because literally everyone in the town is just like, we think this guy definitely did it. And it's like, it. That's your evidence. We think this guy definitely did it. And they're like, that's all we need. That's all we need.
Do you want to hear a story? Do you want to hear a case? One of the cases I covered, which is like totally on what you're saying there, Kevin. It's about, getting caught and convicted on nothing. So this is one of the wildest cases I covered. And it was this guy, he was somewhere in America. He was kind of like a middle-aged guy. I can't remember where, like, I covered this case about a year ago, so I'm not remembering all the details altogether well. But so he was doing his thing. He was like a middle-aged guy, whatever. And his dad had like Alzheimer's or dementia or something. So they hired a carer to look after his dad, whose name was Pete Sr. or whatever. And so the son, Pete Jr., he started to notice that the carer was robbing his dad. Because his dad, was getting, like, had dementia and wasn't altogether there anymore. And so she was, like, getting him to sign, withdrawing, thousands and, maxing out his credit cards and all this stuff. So he started, like, to just try to sue her and try to do all these things. And then, do you know what happened? One day, right, because she knew the jig was up at this point, that the game was over. So what she did was she got a gun in her own house. She killed her husband. This woman did, this caretaker. And then what she did, she picked up the phone. She called her own mother and said, Pete Coons Jr. is coming to kill me. And then she shot herself. She murder-suicided herself and her husband. And then because of the phone call, they blamed it on Pete Jr., who wasn't there at all. He ended up getting charged and convicted and doing 12 years in prison for obviously a murder he didn't commit, a murder-suicide that was blamed on him. He got out of prison. He died like 2 months later because in prison he developed cancer. And I guess, health services in prison aren't altogether as good as they would be on the outside. And he appealed and it was successful after 12 years in prison. And then he died. It's like the most sad and wild story I ever heard in my life.
Wow, that's like the Balrog yanking down Gandalf.
Yes, last second.
That's crazy. That's spiteful.
I know. It's like her revenge on him, like to get him back, was to kill her husband and herself, and like she wasn't going to be alive to see like the revenge play out. It was the weirdest thing I'd ever heard in my life.
He didn't even wrong her. He just caught her.
Yeah,
like she was the one doing bad things.
Exactly. Yeah. She was robbing his dad, who was obviously he was kind of not really there anymore. But it was a wild story. Like that's definitely one of those ones where you're like, I don't even know how they convicted him. It was mainly on the basis of the phone call where she was like, he's coming in the house, he's coming to kill me, and yada yada yada. So that was, but I mean, he did 12 years for that, and if he could have done the rest of his life, which turned out not to be that long. But yeah, that was an odd one. But speaking of cases about like people getting caught, if you don't know the victim, like if you're just a random serial killer or something, the chances of you, getting caught are very, very low. Like it's nearly always, somebody they know. Like it's the classic statistic of it's going to be your husband, your wife, or whatever. Mm-hmm. But with these like serial killer cases like I've covered and stuff like that, these people can get away for decades and never be caught because it's just
it's like impossible.
There's the current.
There's no way to know who did it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Isn't the solve rate currently in the U.S. something like 50%?
That sounds about right.
Sound right.
Yeah. That definitely
it's
sounds
just
right.
way lower than I think most people realize that.
Yeah.
If you look at the flip side of that, there's, you flip a coin and it's like heads, you get away with murder, and tails, you don't.
Yeah. So, I mean, you got 50-50 chance if anybody ever comes for your cat, Matthew. You're kind of good there. You got your Tomahawks ready.
There was a really bad one that I watched that was front of mind when I was saying that someone could get convicted based on nothing, in which this woman died, this wife. She fell down the stairs. She fell down the basement stairs. And the husband had a rock solid alibi. Like, he was at the gas station and someone saw him there when she died. Like, within like 2 minutes. It was like not possible for him to have killed her because he was like not even home, and people knew that. The reason that they ended up, and they convicted this guy and he was in jail for at least 6 years from what I remember, is that after his wife died, he like got a new girlfriend who was like younger. And the people in town, just didn't like that. They thought that was suspicious.
Ooh,
they were like, they're like, hold on, this guy, his wife's died, and now he's like, dating someone else who's younger. He definitely killed her, and he definitely didn't. But that was all it took for them to send him to prison for 6 years until he eventually, somebody, I don't recall who, like reopened his case at appeal or whatever, and they were like, it makes no sense at all. It's clear. You know what they had to do? This is what they had to do. Some forensic guy, like a blood spatter expert or someone. Oh my God. I just remember how ridiculous this story gets. Okay. So the woman fell backwards down her basement stairs and like smashed her head. Okay. And that's how she died. In order to prove that is what happened, this blood spatter guy went to like a high school play where they were doing Peter Pan, because in Peter Pan, the kids had harnesses to do Peter Pan, to fly around. Okay. So using the harnesses at the Peter Pan play and like a makeshift staircase, they then like put fake blood on someone's head and like threw them backwards down the stairs to see where the blood would go. And using that test, they said, look, this is what happened. And that's what it took in order to get this guy out of prison. It's ridiculous.
That's the science I'd love to see. So ridiculous.
Mike, when you go through these stories, because we're talking about all of this kind of unjust stuff and crazy things like a serial killer or whatever, in all of your videos or something else that you didn't cover that you just came across, have you ever felt really sympathetic to a murderer? Or and that may be the wrong word. I don't know what the right one is, but something that's either you totally understand why this happened, or you I don't want to say supported the murder, but do you get where I'm going with this?
I do, yeah. It's interesting, like covering murder for I've had that chapter since 2017, although it really kind of became that chapter in 2018. So I've been doing essentially murder cases for about 5 years now, and it's kind of weird, covering this kind of stuff constantly. You'd think you'd kind of become numb to it. But I would actually say covering these stories has made me more empathetic as a person, which is kind of what you would think the opposite would be. You think you'd get used to it, but strangely, it's done the opposite for me. But yeah, there's definitely been cases where you can see that, the killer, like they brutally murdered someone, but they were at the same time just like a messed up kid who didn't really have any, like obviously, your sympathy lies with the victim and their families, always. But, I definitely think sometimes you can see like, man, this person, they really didn't have a hope. From day one, they didn't have a chance. Their life could never have been normal just from the circumstances they were born into, where they were raised. I mean, you see it time and time again, like with killers and serial killers and all that kind of stuff. It's like the childhood trauma, childhood abuse, that kind of stuff. They would have a hard time being, a normal person. So then oftentimes, and then when you add it, maybe with drugs or they develop a mental illness or something, they really didn't have a hope. And, you often see with these cases where they should have gotten help, from either their family or from somebody. But they didn't. They just let, slip through the cracks. And then this is definitely, then they ended up murdering somebody. But yeah, sorry, I kind of went on there a bit. I have actually no idea what the original question was. But yeah, definitely, there's definitely cases where you feel empathy and sympathy for the victim, or sorry, for the killer. But no, it always has to lie with the victim. At the end of the day, they did what they did. And especially like the justice system in America does not mess around. Like life without parole. Sometimes, when you see what they did, you're still like, man, what must it feel like? Like every time I'm covering a case and you get to that part where it's the sentencing, and you're seeing the person there, even if they did some horrific stuff. Can you imagine just sitting there and hearing life in prison without the possibility of parole? Like that's right. Must be like an insane thing to hear. Sometimes they definitely deserved it, but yeah, it's tough.
You talked about all these circumstances that lead to something bad happening, right? Do you think that every killer is made in some way through circumstance or developing a mental illness, or is just anything like that? Or do you think some people are truly born bad?
The nature, that's it. Oh, yeah, it's the old one, right? The nature versus nurture argument. I do think that majority of the time it is. It's nurture. Like a lot of times you see the McDonald triad, which is like peeing in the bed when you're too old to pee in the bed, hurting animals, and then I guess childhood trauma or head injury. That's setting fire. That's the other one. Sorry, arson, like obsessed with setting fire. They're like the big ones. But you usually see head trauma as well, and abusive childhoods that you just see the same things appearing again and again with these people when they're growing up. But then, so I'd say like 90%, 99% of them are, it's nurture. And I'm not saying, sometimes it's like they could have come from the best households, but they just, I don't know, things went wrong for them. Even if they had, came from very loving families, things just never worked out. But yeah, there has definitely been cases where you're like, man, you were a great kid. You had nothing wrong with you. Your parents were lovely people, your siblings or whatever, your friends. And then, they're just like, yeah, I just wanted to kill somebody since I could, you often see with child killers, sort of people who are still developing. Like there was this case of this guy, Daniel Marsh. He broke into he just wanted to kill. He had a real normal school childhood, wasn't like bullied, nothing. He just wanted to kill people. So he crept into their bedroom windows while they're sleeping and like took out a knife and kind of went to work. It's pretty weird. It's a bit of both, but I'd say 99% it's nurture. You can kind of spot these things coming. So yeah, be on the lookout. And if you see any kids hurting animals, setting fire to things, or wetting the bed, just hey, life without parole. Come on, let's just save ourselves a trouble here. Just lock them up, throw away. Come on.
Hey, just cut out the middleman.
Yeah, exactly.
There was,
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say on the topic of like pure evil people, there was one episode that I watched where this woman was poisoning husbands. So she poisoned her first husband to death, got away with it. No one ever figured out that she was poisoning him. Poisoned the second husband, he died. This was with antifreeze, by the way. She was feeding them antifreeze. The second husband dies. And then people start to sniff around. There was some evidence that looked weird. Like, why did this guy die like this? This doesn't add up. The cops were kind of bearing down on her. And this is what she does. She tries to then antifreeze poison her daughter to death and forges a suicide note for the daughter in which the daughter is overcome with the guilt of her having poisoned her two dads. And that was going to be how the mom was going to get away with killing the two dads, is that she was killing then her own daughter and pinning the murders on her. But the daughter lived. Plot twist. The daughter survived the poisoning and ended up obviously being a witness in the trial of like, yeah, my mom said, come over and we'll have some drinks. And then I don't remember anything. And
that's
the moment where I was like, this woman, so as if any of that stuff wasn't bad enough, the moment I was like, this woman is just pure evil, is that it shows her in the court and the daughter is just like bawling her eyes out about her mom killing her two dads and then trying to kill her and pin the murder on them. And the mom is stone-faced. She has no emotion at all. It's like she's bored at the DMV. That's how like stone-faced she is as her like daughter that she tried to kill is crying at her trial. I was like, this woman is just completely evil. What else do you say about that? Like no emotion at all. Just total psycho.
Yeah. I know that's Stacey Caster, right? I remember that's a really, really interesting case. Yeah, I know. That's actually, poisoning your like significant other with antifreeze is actually more common than you'd think. And apparently it's like a really painful way to go. because it forms like crystals in your blood or something. And well, I think it was like tasteless and odor, and I think it was tasteless. It was tasteless and odorless, and I think they had to add stuff to it to stop people from slipping it into other people's drinks as a poison. It's a super interesting one, man. Yeah, what's going through their heads? You know, because they keep up this persona, this like false persona of like being a loving wife who's, well, obviously, you know, she's murdering her husbands, but you know, when she's caught, it's like, you know, they just revealed a monster that was underneath the whole time. It's really, really bizarre. Yeah, it's scary what humans are capable of. Because I mean, you know, I anyway, you know, go through life kind of thinking that, you know, everybody kind of thinks the same way I do. You know, not on all issues, but you know, we all have the same kind of general mentality of don't be a monster and don't kill people and hurt people. So it's, I mean, I hope so. That's what I tell people.
Bold of you to assume.
I know, yeah, exactly. This is the first time I've said it out loud, and I just realized how stupid I sound. But but you know, and it's like, what must be going through your heads when you're at that point and you've just like brutally murdered, you know, your husband's and like poison him with antifreeze. Like another case I covered recently. I covered this a couple of weeks ago, and there was this guy. He was about to be kicked out of his house by his dad, or at least that's what they believed the motive was, because he wouldn't get a job. He was like 20 years old. It's actually very similar to the cases of Chandler Halderson, who you might be familiar with. That was kind of a well-known case. He was a guy who, again, was going to be kicked out. He was like college age. He was pretending to go to college, and he dropped out, and he pretended he got a job at SpaceX and was just forging everything. Or Grant Amato, who's another well-known case where he was sending like hundreds of thousands of dollars to a cam girl in Romania, and his parents had to intervene and cut off his credit card. All of these people killed their own families. Anyway, totally getting off topic here, but the most recent one was, there
is no off topic with this. It's all incredible. like you could just dive down a rabbit hole here that comes out like somewhere in China, and I'm just going to sit here like enthralled.
Oh man, I haven't gotten to the half.
Literally nothing you can say that's going to be bad.
Well, wait till you get a load of this guy, because what he did, so his dad was going to kick him out because he wouldn't get a job. So he did the old got out a rifle, killed his parents and his sister, and then he shot himself in the foot and called the police, saying a guy had just broken in, murdered his family, I wrestled with him, he shot me in the foot, and he fled. And that was his get out of jail free card, was the invisible home intruder, who brutally murdered his family, shot him in the hoof, and then legged it. You know, it's like, what's going through these people's heads when they're...
Wait, what's the plan after that? And then what happens? Like, you'd say he gets away with it. Does he get insurance money and that he's going to live off of? Like, what's the end goal here?
I don't think they think that far ahead. I don't think they had much. Yeah.
Just kill them?
It's a tough way to get a place to live, but you know.
Yeah, like this does not seem to improve your situation, sir.
No, and now he's got a hole in his foot as well.
Right.
It's like, goddamn.
How did they disprove that, like, what piece of evidence did they find that said, no, there was no home intruder, this was you?
His story kept changing. Like, literally, I think the day they found him, they arrested him. So his story kept changing about his description of this guy. There was no DNA evidence. They brought in dogs. Dogs could not find the scent of any other person who was not like their family. And then they could also tell that, so his story was that he went into like the living room and he grappled with this guy who had used the family's own gun against them, which was also like another one, a home intruder doesn't bring their own weapon. It also turned out, like, I don't really know a whole lot about guns, but this was some kind of rifle that's really unusual to load or something. If you guys know more about guns, I'm sure you guys will probably be aware. But yeah, it was like that whole thing sounded ridiculous. Like a guy would break into a house full of people, use their own gun against them that just happened to be like laying there, lying around, knew how to load it, which the detectives didn't even know how to load it when they came to the scene. They had to watch a YouTube video to figure out how to actually load this weapon. And then, so he said he was in the living room. He heard the shots. He went in, he grappled with this guy. The gun went off, hole in his foot. And then this guy legged it. But they could tell by the blood that he had gone into his own room, shot himself in the foot there, and then crawled back out. Like there was this evidence just did not make sense. And yeah, it was kind of pretty cut and dry, but it was bizarre. Batshit really is the only way to put it. But that's what people do, which is very, very strange.
This is, and was this, did you say the name on that? Was that Alexander Jackson? Was it that one?
That's the one. Yeah, you can see the thumbnail on my channel. It's a really crazy story. Because like you can see the body cam in it and stuff of when they went into the house, and it's insane. Like it's just like, help! There was a guy who came in. Like he sounds like Napoleon Dynamite or something when they break in.
Yeah, no, I'm just intrigued by all of the little elements to that where you think he would have done it in a cleaner way, like a simpler way, right?
I know. Yeah, these people just don't really think out, I guess.
Well, that was my point earlier about how it just seems so easy to get away with this stuff, because at least in the TV shows and the stories that I've heard online, that the people get caught for doing the dumbest thing. Like here's a prime example, number one. Okay, when it comes to establishing a motive, they take an insurance policy out on the person that they're going to kill, like the day before they kill him. There was literally a story that I watched in which this couple took a life insurance policy out on this girl, then pushed her off a cliff the next day, and then the day after pushing her off the cliff, went to cash the insurance policy. This was a 3-day endeavor.
They did not want to muck around.
Day 1, get the insurance policy. Day 2, push off cliff. Day 3, collect money. I mean, come on.
Ding, ding, ding. Thumbs up. Come on. What's wrong with that? It works out perfectly. No time wasting here. This is a no time wasting zone.
Wow. It's so odd.
A lot of these stories feel like a choose your own adventure book where like there's a succession of decisions that get somebody from being extremely upset or whatever the opening feeling is to some really odd chain of events that just doesn't make sense in the end. And it's like at each of these junctures, they're just thinking, what's the dumbest or worst possible thing I can do right now? And like, that's the door they choose to open and go through. And by the end of it, you get to such a weird place with it. What do you think the event that starts the whole thing is most commonly? So like I asked that in the worst possible way. What's the most common way the whole chain of events begins?
Usually financial. It's kind of comes back to the old thing. It's always for love or money. And that's always just been true. Jealousy can be like, sometimes it'll be just years. Like another story here. Sorry, I'm actually just having my channel open. I've made over like 400 videos. So a lot of times just blend into one. But yeah, there was a sister, her mother like was buying a house for her sister. And the other sister, was super jealous of it, but it had clearly been something that had just been building up for decades of her mother favoring the other sister. So what she did then was, like we've already talked about, she killed the mother, she killed the sister, and then she made it look like, a murder-suicide, like the sister had killed the mother and then herself. There's never really any one motive, but yeah, it's always insurance. It's always life insurance. It's always money or life insurance. Or sorry, love or life insurance. It's the classic thing. But yeah, you'll oftentimes though have these stories of people just saying they just wanted to kill somebody for a long time. If it's not for love or money, it's just because they wanted to kill and they just had wanted to do it for years. They had talked about it, talked about stabbing people, talked about murdering people. And these are people who are not like very, subtle in these desires. They're like drawing notebooks. They're like telling every single person they know, you know what I would love to do? It's just like chop somebody's head off. Mad about it. Like these people go around talking about these kind of things. The range of psychopaths out there, is pretty wild. And there's very rarely an evil genius, out there. They're usually always dumb as shit. And if they don't get caught, it's probably luck. A lot of times it's luck. It's luck that they don't get caught, but it's also then later on luck that they do, get caught also.
This, as you were talking about this, I'm thinking of this case that you've been putting a little time into recently, where this guy has like 30 Google searches of the most on the nose, crazy shit right before he does something awful. I forget the details of this case. What did this guy do?
Oh yeah, this is the one in Boston. I just made a short about it, so I haven't had made a full 30-minute video on it. But yeah, essentially, I'm pretty sure it was another lifer, life insurance, ding ding ding, winner winner chicken dinner. But yeah, he spent a whole day. He said his wife like went to a work trip. I think they lived in like Quincy or something. And he said his wife went to a work trip in like Washington, DC, a work trip that didn't exist. And yeah, she just disappeared. Blood was found in their basement. Now, I as far as I'm aware to date, her body has never been found. But yeah, when they did a quick Google search or like his Google history or whatever, it's like, how to dispose of a body, how to chop up a body, how to get rid of blood. You know, like literally like the stupidest things you ever heard in your life. Like a 5-year-old child on your Google, you know, show me boob, that kind of stuff, but for a murder. Like, it's insane.
It reminds me of Office Space when they're looking up like the definition of money laundering in a dictionary. And it's like that level of unpreparedness, and like, they're way out of their element. They haven't thought about anything. But yeah, I think you tweeted something about him not knowing incognito mode or something. Yeah. It's like, it is that simple, isn't it? Where the slightest little thing at least could have made it harder for the authorities to see his search history.
Exactly. I'm pretty sure. Exactly. I'm pretty sure they can see your, but yeah, exactly. That even just, he didn't even bother taking that extra step of using incognito mode or using, I don't know, even a VPN or anything like that. He was just on his phone there, just, you know, hanging out, having a beer, you know what I mean? Just on the Google on his iPhone there, just faffing about. Doing
casual searches about how to kill your wife.
Exactly. Yeah. Scrolling through that and doom scrolling Reddit, and then doing BuzzFeed quizzes on best ways. What star sign are you? That will determine how you should kill somebody. That kind of like stupid stuff. But yeah.
Which friend are you? And he got Ross, and that just sent him over the edge.
Like,
and it was like, today's the day. I'm gonna kill my mom because I'm Ross from Friends. That's the worst one.
I don't know what you've been sipping, but you've got it all wrong. It's time to commit to the Leaf. We've embraced the smoothness and surprising pick-me-up that tea provides. I literally drink it all day long, nearly a gallon a day, and it powers me through research, script writing, and forums on websites that I refuse to name here. But we don't drink normie NPC tea. We drink cultured and refined anime tea from the Dragon's Treasure. Kevin still likes the gunpowder green called Space Cowboy, and I've sampled nearly 40 Dragon's Treasure teas at this point. Lately, I've been slamming black teas like Kentucky Bourbon and Liquefied Berserk Despair. Scottish Breakfast is deep and peaty, and I smooth it over with Sebastian's Morning Earl Grey, which has the best vanilla cream taste I think I've ever had in a cup. Give me a pot of that with a hot meatball sub from Sal's Pizza and Brooks Barbecue Chicken to wash down my last meal on death row. I highly recommend the sampler packs. You'll want to try everything just like I did. I literally have not had one tea that I wouldn't be happy to reorder. The Dragon's Wings membership fuels new tea experimentation, and the Tea of the Month Club provides a regularly scheduled surprise. And when you order from the Dragon's Treasure using code CREATE, you'll get 10% off your order. That's 10% off using the code CREATE at thedragonstreasure.com. The link's in the description.
I actually would like to talk about your channel. I know that we get obsessed with this murder stuff, but there are like really specific questions for you and with the content that you do that I'm interested in asking you. One of them does have to do with demonetization because about, 16 months ago or so, we did a video on Vsauce 2 called Making a Math Murderer. That was about this Sally Clark case, in which this mother was blamed for deaths, a couple of deaths of her infants. They, that died of SIDS, but they blamed her for killing them. And eventually she was exonerated, but her life was ruined. And it's a really tragic story. But
that's a bad one.
But that video is demonetized. And I tried three different avenues of getting it undemonetized, and all three were big fat failures. After the third time, I decided it was over. I had lost, so that video will never be monetized, and that's because
you can't make a buck with infanticide anymore.
That's right.
Welcome to Biden's America.
I know. Yeah, I know. 2023 can't talk about killing babies, and that was it. That was what the
advertisers don't like it.
They didn't want to run the Starbucks ads over the dead babies. So, what has been your experience with talking about grim and macabre topics and actually being able to sustain a YouTube channel about that?
I've been fairly doing okay. I do get demonetized from time to time. I think the fact that I've got a pretty consistent upload schedule does help. So say if one video does become, demonetized, it's fine. Like I'll have another video in a couple of days, but honestly, it's one of those things where I'm like, oh, they're gonna crack down on true crime like any day now. YouTube is like, it actually used to be worse. I found for true crime, before they introduced, COPPA or whatever. I actually found it got better after that, surprisingly, for me anyway.
The option to let YouTube know that your video is not for kids.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry. That's, I found it got better after that. But generally it's, I would say the majority of my stuff gets monetized. But I do, like, I don't, try to curse too much. I don't like getting into grisly details. I just wouldn't get into it regardless of monetization. But it's definitely something that I'm constantly aware of, because if there's anything that's going to be demonetized, it will be true crime on YouTube. And the way YouTube is, it's like I'm kind of expecting it any day now. Like I'm surprised they haven't come after true crime already. And with the whole way they keep moving the goalposts. So it's acceptable today. Okay, great. I'm applying by all your terms and conditions. We are A-okay. And then 6 months down the line, oh, actually, sorry about that. We changed our mind. And then so like all your whole back catalog is dead. So I think that the only reason they haven't come after true crime is because there's a goddamn Netflix special out every other week. And so they know it's like, it's one of the genres that's really seen a rise, over the last couple of years. I mean, people have always been interested in true crime, going back to like Jack the Ripper and that kind of stuff. Those like Penny Dreadfuls or whatever. But I mean, in recent years, since things like Serial and Making a Murderer, it totally became mainstream. Which was good for me, I guess, because it helped grow my channel a lot. So I think YouTube is probably aware of that. When you look at a lot of the true crime channels, or like the whole genre is like there's a lot of great content out there. There's a lot of channels doing it, but yeah. So for now, it's doing all right, but I'm like totally expecting that to change.
Yeah, I don't know where they're going to go with this, because podcasting, for example, is increasingly a part of YouTube. And the stats on the amount of money that flows in podcasts by platform, YouTube just obliterates all the others combined. It is the place to kind of generate podcast revenue, because there's just so much material on it. I mean, it's not like everybody's doing extremely well. It's that there's just so many people, it adds up.
Yeah.
But the crime angle on podcasting, that's a huge component of the podcast market.
Yeah.
Stuff like criminal, like I could list the murder and all sorts of podcasts that are just fly in the face of the guidelines that the rest of us have to abide by, that Kevin gets struck down by. But that's the whole point of those channels. And I looked at it and I thought, well, I'm not sure exactly what they're going to do here. You push the sector that contains the stuff that you're cracking down on. How is this going to get a pass? Is it like music, where you can have extremely vulgar and racy lyrics, but because it's music, it's okay? Like, how are they going to do this? But they're either going to ignore it or have to come up with a really odd, janky solution.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like they're like, you're absolutely right. YouTube is still the best platform to be on. For all the times I kind of bitch and moan about it, it's still just by far the best. But yeah, I really don't know where it's going to go. I mean, it's they're trying to really turn it into, I guess, what it always wasn't supposed to be, which is just they're turning it into network TV, and that's the one thing nobody wants it to be. But
I do think that it's possible, Matt, that what you're saying is an avenue they could go down in which it does get its own sort of guidelines and treatment, just because we know we know that music does. I mean, I think that that's very common knowledge now that music videos do not at all have to play by the same rules as other content. And it's like, look, if you've established this precedent on music videos, what's to say that you can't slice out other genre of content such as true crime and say, okay, look, you guys can talk about baby killing, but Kevin can't because he's supposedly, an educational science channel. So you're not allowed to cross that stream, just like I can't, start my rap career on Vsauce 2 anytime soon.
I think that's absolutely, that's total truth to that, or there could be. I could definitely see that they've classified YouTube itself through whatever systems, through just human reviews. I guess I probably have gotten, because, when you get to a certain size, that they just, they know how, like, that my videos are true crime. So they don't judge them as harshly because they know what my audience is and XYZ. But yeah,
and the audience knows what they're getting into. I think that's probably a big component of it, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Whereas, talking about, science and technology and then baby killing, maybe they think that's like
right. I'm setting people up for something a little grislier than they subscribed for when they were, wanting to watch FAC on crossbows 8 years ago.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's not like you clickbait them in with like, this is a tutorial on how to change a diaper, and then you end up strangling the baby with it. That's not what's happening.
That would be a good video. Mike, one other like really in the weeds nerdy content question that I had for you that I don't care if it doesn't appeal to anyone else because it's really interesting to me, is that I noticed something with you. Here's what I've noticed.
Ooh.
Okay. So most people that I have followed over the years, when it comes to their branding, especially off platform, they try to brand themselves as the person rather than the name of their YouTube channel. Yeah. So we just had Alternate History Hub, and Cody is a great example of that. He went from Alt History Hub on Twitter to Cody. And I've seen this time and time again. Everybody does this. This is the path, is that they start out with their YouTube channel. They have a Twitter or whatever, other social media that's an ancillary platform that then kind of they try to personalize and bring out the person behind the content. Okay. You, sir, have gone the opposite route. And I don't know why. And I need to know why, because you went from Mike O on Twitter with a lovely little profile picture of your nice face to that chapter. That was such a good picture. To that chapter, which is just full on YouTube channel branding, and Mike is gone. So what's going on here?
I think you've put more thought into this than I do, Kevin. I'm like, I go through.
Shocking that's true. That's never been true with me.
Man, that's, I didn't put that much thought into it, but I think it's because I'm the face, like I'm in all the videos. I'm like, I guess my personality is a huge part of the channel. I wanted, I guess, my off platform things, whatever you want to call it, to not be that, because my face and my personality are so intricately in every single thing that I do. I think I also kind of felt that like, it was good to have brand recognition for this corpo speak kind of shitty thing to say. But I mean, like, Maiko, who's that? Whereas it's like, oh, that chapter. Well, now we're talking. But I'm trying to think of a good answer for you, man, and I really don't have one. I think I was just sick of looking at my own face because I stare at it every day, and goddamn, I want to punch myself in the face.
It was a good profile picture, though. They're drawn all
you
over
convinced
your
me.
face. I mean,
I'm putting it back.
No, Kevin's got a good point on that, on how so many people are going the other way, and I'm trying to think of somebody else who's gone the way you have, and I'm not sure I can. People who are on the newer side, where they really want to reinforce their channel and put that channel out there. I see that, but.
When you're
it's unique.
It's for me, it's literally a month to month thing. Like my entire YouTube journey since I I think it was September 2017, has just, like I said, been stumbling like ass over tea kettle through every single thing I've done for the last 6 years, and somehow I've been lucky enough to make a career out of it, and touch wood, it will last a little bit longer. I guess I just got bored of it, of just looking at myself. You know what? I'm not trying to conduct any experiment here, but I'm trying to think if I saw my followers or engagement grow since I changed it, and I can't tell. If I had to hint, I would say I probably did see engagement grow or like follower numbers grow since I changed it to the brand. But I mean, I can't tell if that's because, my content is just so good. No, I can't tell. I would say if I had to guess, I probably would have seen, more Twitter followers or Instagram followers than normal. But that could just be totally me, just not me being an idiot, as I always am. But you know what? It's a good experiment. I'm going to start tracking it. I actually think I will. I'm going to create a spreadsheet and see if like engagement grows or dips, depending on is it the person or the brand. Because I mean, my channel could have just been called Maiko. Like, I'm not even too sure why I didn't. I think I was just sick of calling it of my own name. And I thought it's a boring name, so create that chapter. I mean, my channel actually started out as Vague Chapters, which is an even worse name. Because, man, I have to say, Kevin, Vsauce was hugely influential on that chapter. Vsauce 2, you, Jake, and Michael were very influential on when I started out on YouTube. I would watch you guys all the time. I even got one of your like, remember just the Vsauce like loot crate things you guys would send out, the little packages? I have one of them, which had the posters. I did. So I'm not joking. I had a black t-shirt with the V on it, and it had a purple, green, and blue like splatters on the front of it. I had that t-shirt. I had the posters with all your channel logos. I had the stickers on my laptop, which had your faces on it, like in a cartoon kind of style. So awesome. That was probably like one of the reasons maybe I didn't want to call myself. I was like, oh, well, Vsauce 2 guys don't use their names, so I'll do something like that. It started out as Vague Chapters, and then I was like, well, this name sucks. But I started out doing like kind of sciencey videos, like a little bit of everything, like fact type videos and like just weird story videos. And then I started doing more and more like true crime and horror. And so it became like that chapter because it was like that like specific thing. And then chapter I always thought was interesting is each video was like a chapter in the book of the channel, which is also an incredibly dumb thing to say when I say it out loud. But that's
it makes sense though that it's this combination of sequential pieces and they go how they go, and each thing is kind of a chapter.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of where it came from. But yeah, back to your original question about my profile picture. You know what? I'm gonna keep track of it. I'll keep an eye on it. See how it does. see if my socials grow or not. Not that I even post much.
We want to help you make something and mean something. And we say that phrase all the time because when you're making something and you know it means something, even if it's just to you, that's when you feel pretty good about what you're creating. The support for the Create Unknown in recent weeks has been incredible. Animators, artists, musicians, YouTubers, aspiring filmmakers, comedians, it is crazy how talented everybody in this community is. Consider joining the Create Unknown Patreon. Every dollar that comes through goes straight into the podcast and its community. That means more highlights videos. It means a big Minecraft project that's on the way. And eventually we'd like to manufacture custom piss bottles so you never have to leave your battle station. And being a patron unlocks participation in all of our live recordings. You've seen the roster of guests we've had. Having access to their minds is a unique opportunity. You can go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown or click the link that's in the description. Every little bit helps, and your support means absolutely everything to us. Patreon.com/thecreateunknown, links in the description. We appreciate you, Space Cowboys. Well, you touched on a question that I wanted to ask about how you got into the crime stuff, because you, like I said in the intro, and like anybody who has listened to this point knows, like, Mike, you are a storyteller, you're a talker in the best possible way. It's hypnotic to listen to you. And when somebody has that skill, you could do virtually anything with it. I mean, you could have made it any number of channels and it would have worked because you have this skill. And you said the sciencey type stuff. That's amazing because I thought, why aren't you an educational YouTuber? Like you could crush it, And I wondered how you ended up landing on crime. And also, if crime gets banned, or let's say it disappears, I don't know which is more likely, that YouTube bans all crime content, or we all just start behaving properly. What is the next chapter going to be in terms of content? What else would you do?
If I had to do something else, not crime, it'd probably be history. I'll just change the title. I'll call it Mike Sauce History Channel. I think that's pretty good. Got it all figured out. Yeah, definitely history. So like you're saying about, crime being, it's kind of a dicey place to be. Like I've been lucky because, especially in recent years, interest in true crime has kind of skyrocketed. Like I said, every other week Netflix has some goddamn documentary coming out, and I actually feel like things are probably going to change soon. I feel like true crime is so oversaturated. People will always be interested in true crime, but I feel like the next big thing is now scams and that kind of stuff is like becoming like, it's
breakage,
that kind of stuff. Yeah, exactly. Like it's I guess you could kind of qualify it as under true crime kind of umbrella, true crime * umbrella. But yeah, like, Theranos, these like Bernie Madoff, that kind of stuff. But if I was not to do true crime, I'd definitely do history, because that's I'm a bit like, that's like kind of my nerdy thing. I think it's one of the reasons why I always love going to Boston, because I have a huge, like, I'm obsessed with American Revolutionary history for some weird reason. As an Irish guy, I just love reading about it. Like last time we were there, we went to like Minuteman Park and Concord and the bridge, the Old North Bridge, and I've done the Freedom Trail and all that. I have no idea why I'm so interested in that, but I just am. So like if true crime, gets banned off YouTube, that's what I do. But I recently launched a podcast, like That Chapter podcast, where I'm like really interested in getting into more of those kind of type stories, like true crime mixed with history. Like one of the stories I covered was the Hart brothers, who were like these two serial killer brothers during the American Revolution, who went around like Kentucky and Tennessee, just like slitting necks and cashing checks. And like they killed like 50 people. Like it's an insane story. Like they were just these two bandits who just went around murdering everybody they could. They were like in the Revolutionary War, and they fought on the British side. And then after the war, they just left and went to like the frontier and just like killing everybody they came across.
So their spree was after the war, so it wasn't like ideologically driven as part of the war.
Oh, no, they didn't give a shit. They were just like happy to kill anybody they could. They went around there in like Illinois, like that. It's a really crazy story. They came to some pretty grisly ends too. Or another story I'm covering soon was the mutiny on the Batavia, which is a super interesting story. It was a ship that was like, this is in the 1600s. It was like a treasury ship that was leaving from Amsterdam to Batavia, which is now, what's the name of the city? It's like, I think it's in Indonesia or somewhere. I can't actually remember what the city is called now. But anyway, there was like a mutiny on board, and this guy, he wanted to kill everybody on the ship and then take over the ship, which was filled with gold and jewels, and then like create his new kingdom and become like a pirate king. The mutiny plot didn't work. But during the mutiny, they got the captain of the ship, like in on the plot. And so they left the ship's convoy and they kind of went off course, and they were hoping to do the mutiny there, but it didn't work out. But what did happen is the ship crashed on rocks just off the coast of Australia. And so then the mutineers just started murdering literally everybody, stealing all the jewels, creating this little like hellhole of outlaw bandits. And then their whole plan was to wait for a rescue ship to come to rescue the jewels and then kill everybody in rescue ship and then set sail. Things did not go well for them, but like that's the kind of story.
This is like not a good plan. None of this is a good plan.
No, it sounds
bad
awful.
Plan.
Yeah. We'll kill the rescuers, and then when somebody comes for them, we'll kill them too. But like those kind of stories.
I'm just scrolling through the Wikipedia entry for this, and it's wild.
It's a wild,
Like if this were the plot for a like a Netflix show, I'd be like, oh, you guys went too crazy with this. It's not plausible.
Super interesting story. I'm reading this really good book at the moment. So I'm gonna like that's the kind of like I'll be covering that one soon. So that's the kind of stories like I'd be mad to do if I wasn't doing like modern true crime. And I guess that's kind of what the podcast is about. It kind of gives me a break from doing the up to date stuff and indulge in my like historical nerdiness.
Well,
yeah, it's interesting because it's so sufficiently different, but at the same time, it hits a lot of the same beats.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like a good fit, really.
Yeah. I hope so. Yeah. I mean, like I've always, like, my mother was a history teacher. I've always just loved history. I don't know why. But yeah, that's definitely kind of like avenues I'm going to breaking off into, because I mean, I wanted to just as well, you know, having all your eggs in a YouTube basket is probably not a good idea the best of times, really. I mean, like I said, I've been doing this for full time since like 2019 and hope to continue doing it full time. But I mean, you know, every time I get an email from YouTube, your heart kind of stops for a minute. You're like, oh my God, did they delete my channel? Like, I've never actually gotten anything bad, but you know, you just like still wonder, oh, is today the day? I swear to God, it feels like you're in jail and you're just like hearing sometimes when you're on Twitter and it's like, oh, YouTube deleted my channel, or my channel got hacked or demonetized. It's like you're in jail and you're hearing the gunshots go off outside, you know?
Well, hopefully the new YouTube CEO likes true crime.
yeah. That's going to be super interesting.
History.
Yeah, hopefully it is. I'll send him an email. Be really nice.
What is your actual process for, like, from start to finish, to say, you know, here's a story that I'm interested in. What happens next, and how do you end up with, you know, like this script? Like how are you reading a story, sort of making it your own and then telling it back? What is that process like?
Man, that's a good question. So usually my stories come from suggestions. And then, the wilder, the better. The ones that have like the full twists and turns in them, like the ones we were talking about at the top of the show, you know, the ones that when, you know, I could imagine telling this to somebody and them just being like, what the shit, you know, those kind of stories. That's like when I'm reading this and I'm like, what is going on? They really thought that was going to work. You know, they really thought that was a good idea. When I get that feeling after reading an article or whatever, I'm like, yes, I'm in. And then just going through every news report I can, going always with like local news and stuff like that for the best possible sources. And then just writing it. I always try and write my stories or my scripts. And I do have some researchers now who help me out as well, which is something I've gotten recently. So that's been amazing. But I always just try and tell my stories like I'm telling, you know, friends over a beer, like in the bar, you know, or down the pub. Just telling them like I would to anybody, you know, get a load of this. Guess what he did next? You know, that kind of stuff. I think when I started out making videos, I was very much like, you know, and then the killer walked into the room, that kind of stuff, like Dateline, talk like Dateline kind of thing. Which is fine. And that's great. It's just not for me. I just find it kind of boring, personally, but it's fine. So then I just wanted to tell the stories like I was just talking to a regular person. I also have this really bad habit of not being able to take things very seriously because I use humor as a defense mechanism a lot. And also when I'm anxious, I make jokes. It's like my just default reaction. So then I sometimes put in, I guess, kind of like little bits of humor in my stories if I can to try and break the ice, which some people really don't like, which is fine. But others do. And yeah, that's just kind of how I try and tell my stories. I think I've probably just got a dark sense of humor, which kind of seeps into kind of everything I do as well.
I listen to a lot of crime content, and really always have. Like with podcasts, I think the only podcasts I listen to are crime based. I'm trying to think of one that isn't. And there's a real lack of personality in a lot of them, where it's somebody reading the thing back, and it's not even Dateline mode. It's sort of like somebody pulled up Reddit and just is reading it out loud to me, emotionless. And that can be okay, you know, to have it in the background, and like you put it on purposely to tune out, and you tune in to hear something interesting for 20 seconds and then kind of back away. But what you do is so different from that. I'm glad you described it the way you did, because it really truly feels like you're hanging out with somebody and they are just excited to tell you about something that is bonkers, you know, and going in an appropriate amount of detail, not being so exacting that it becomes slow and boring, not glossing over anything either. It's this really, it's a perfect blend. And
thank you.
I wondered what your process was like to get there. Was it you just doing it how you wanted to, how it felt good to do it? Or did you have an analytical way to refine as you went along?
Comfort, just becoming more and more comfortable. You know, finding myself for, to sound again like an idiot, which I've done consistently throughout this whole interview.
No.
No, honestly, just comfort. Definitely getting out of my comfort zone. So when I started out, I was definitely that kind of very dry, the killer, blah, blah, blah. Then I did I made these videos a couple of years ago. They were like conspiracy videos where it was just me talking about the most ridiculous conspiracy theories, like, flat earths, chemtrails, that kind of stuff, reptoids, that kind of shit. And they were just like videos. I just really wanted to do something completely different and out there, and kind of weird, and just be myself and joke around and stuff like that. And that doing something like that really helped impact then doing the true crime videos, because I totally just felt so much more comfortable telling the story. I guess when you kind of start out on YouTube, everybody feels the need to kind of be like somebody else, be like who they would watch and who the YouTubers they would look up to would tell the story. And it does take a while, I think, to find out, well, no, how would I tell the story? I can't, and you shouldn't try and be like other people. I guess it's just human nature to try and do it when you start out. So I guess
it's how you learn, though.
Yeah,
I mean, sorry to interject, but like, I really think about this in terms of learning an instrument. It's like, you're not going to pick up a guitar and just make up your own songs out of the gate. Like, that's not happening unless you're Mozart.
You
like,
struggle,
there's no way.
You struggle with Sweet Home Alabama like everybody else did.
You struggle with Sweet Home Alabama for months, and then eventually you move on to Smells Like Teen Spirit. Like, there is a progression here. And
you move on to be a worse guitarist.
It always starts with imitation.
For sure. For
me,
it
starts with imitation.
It was Plug-in Baby for me. That was the song I was learning on guitar.
It was what?
Plug-in Baby? You know that Muse song? Plug-in Baby, my Muse. Okay. That's a great song. Like, it's got that really real iconic guitar kind of riff intro. But yeah, you're absolutely right. For sure.
I'll look it up.
It's great. It's on their second album. Yeah, you're absolutely right, though. Yeah, for sure. You do kind of start out trying to emulate, I guess, people who you would look up to, which is cool. But I guess, I guess there was a point, I guess, I don't know, maybe a year, 18 months into it, where I just started to find myself, find my own kind of voice, stop kind of trying to tell the story as I would tell it without any. You get to a point where you can just tune out other influences, I feel, after you've done it so many times, or maybe you just get bored. I don't know what it is, but it was just getting comfortable. Sometimes I think I've probably gotten too comfortable. I need to get out of my comfort zone yet again, so that I need to push myself again. But that's where I am now, I guess, trying to figure that out.
That'll be the history stuff. I mean, it's a bit of a pivot, but so wait. So do you play guitar?
I do. I play guitar and bass. I used to play in bands for a little bit, like in some gigs around town. Now, again, if you gave me a guitar, my fingers would probably bleed. They're so soft. I haven't picked up an axe in a couple of years. And I was a bass player in the band. I always preferred playing the bass in bands. I always loved bass, subtlety of bass. But I was never good. Like, you know what I mean? I was the shitty guitarist, but I could play riffs, and I knew all the chords and yada, yada, yada. I still have a Les Paul. It was an Epiphany or Epiphone. Is it Epiphany or Epiphone? I never remember which one. It was a Les Paul custom anyway, was my guitar.
Yeah. I bring it up because every YouTuber has a music background.
Really?
Every one of them. Yeah. Like, I wish that somebody who listens to this show religiously and is just really bored one weekend can go through the episodes and create a spreadsheet, perhaps, of all of the YouTubers that we've talked to that have some kind of musical background.
That's bizarre.
Is insane. It is shocking. No one talks about it.
Yeah. When you pointed it out, and I forget when that was, it was a while ago now, but I'd never thought about it until you said, hey, there's a common thread with so many people, so many creative people, and it's music. Once you said that, now I notice, and it is virtually everybody. And the only ones that it hasn't popped on, I think we just didn't get to that topic. We didn't ask them. I really would love a poll of like every single YouTube person we know. And there's gotta be a shocking percentage, like 3 standard deviations from the mean on this. It's got to be that
That's
high.
super rich. I mean, on one hand, it's like, okay, I guess YouTube is creative and music is creative. But then on the other hand, like, are any of them also artists, like painting and pictures? Because I cannot paint for shit. I'll tell you that much. My mom is actually an artist, but I can't paint for shit. Like, are many YouTubers also oil paintings or watercolor? No? Wow.
I don't think so. I think it's music. I think there's something about like the connections in your brain that develop learning an instrument, playing an instrument, the rhythm of it, and like the rhythm of editing, the rhythm of storytelling. There's some sort of like ironclad connection, I think, between playing music and being successful on YouTube. So there's like a top line TCU tip for young people out there to get good at YouTube is learn an instrument.
Pick up a flute.
Pick up
the uilleann pipes.
That's it.
That's it.
It all goes back to
we should choose these. It does, because this is going to be the only opportunity we ever have to talk about the uilleann pipe. So I'm just going to hit that as hard as I possibly can.
I do not know anything about that instrument as well. I know nothing about Irish music, honestly, at all. In fact, I kind of actively hate Irish music. You know, like the diddly-eye, fiddle, and Baron stuff. Not a fan. Kind of drives me crazy. I had to study it in school. Did not like it.
When a few minutes before we started here, I said to Kevin, I'm like, oh, this song that I'm referencing is an Ulster hunting song. I hope that's not like offensive, because if somebody said something to me, like the one thing I hated, and I mean hate, when I would go to other countries is saying that I'm from New York. I'm not remotely close to New York City. I have nothing in common with the people who live there. But everybody's like, oh, I love the city. I love Manhattan and whatever. And like thinking I have.
That's
exactly.
that.
I'm like, listen to me talk. Which borough do you think I'm from? You know? And just getting that little detail wrong can just like, you know, be fingernails on the chalkboard for somebody. And I stressed out about it with that song. I'm like, oh, well, it's actually an Ulster song, and that's just a little bit of a faux pas here.
Matthew, I'm not gonna lie, I had no idea what you're talking about when you said that song. So,
oh, well, it's a good song.
Is it? I have no idea.
I'll pop it in the episode chat. Yeah. There's a really good version from a couple guys who were in a long-standing Irish band, but the Hare's Lament is quite nice. It's about a fox hunt for a rabbit, but it's told from the perspective of the rabbit being hunted.
Oh, okay.
So it's
what's it? Wait, what's this one called?
It's a great example of the pipes just being not bagpipes, being a standout instrument that is piercing, but in a pleasant way. I like the song. It's like, can you tell I like the song?
It's hurting my ears, but it's also really enjoyable. The Hare's Lament. Oh, Christy O'Leary and Bert Devitt. I'm sure it's an absolute banger. Do not know it, but you know what? I'll give it a you. The Hare's Laments. Okay, it sounds kind of Irish already, because you know it's going to be sad and depressing. On Yonder Hill. Yeah, I can see these are in Irish too. The titles of the other songs on this album are in Gaelic anyway.
What about Oh Danny Boy? That's a banger.
Banger,
the pipes.
10 out of 10. Calling. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
This is like this. Do you know, I'm like the Irish person other Irish people hate, because I actually kind of like you two. Like all these older ones. Yeah, I actually do. I always say that I have your dad's taste in music. Like the music I go to is Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty, U2. Like that's the kind of music I like. But like a lot of this old Irish stuff, I'm like, I have no. I think it's probably one of those things because I'm just born in it, and it's just everywhere and around me at all times. You just don't appreciate it at all, and it just kind of sickens you a little bit. You're just like, it's kind of like, you go into Dublin. I don't know if any of you guys have ever been to Dublin, but like you walk around and so tourist traps everywhere with like shamrocks, and they're playing today, and it's just like, oh my god. That drives you insane.
It's like grunge music for people that are from Seattle.
Yeah, I imagine. Absolutely that. Yeah, you're just like so sick of it.
And they just think all the most popular bands are lame, and the bands that you've never heard of, those are the actual good bands, not Nirvana and Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam. That's all lame Soundgarden. You have to listen to whatever Mudhoney. I don't know. People more obscure than that. Mother Love Bone.
I'll show you some real obscure Irish trad music, and then we'll be talking. I'll get the hipster Irish trad. That's the only music I listen to.
Yeah, you better share that. I want to hear it. So we do have questions. We have a few really good questions that we have to get to. But before we get to those questions, while we're on the subject of Ireland, I myself am like 80% Irish. Okay. So I wanted to ask you, do I get like a potato pass or something like that to be able to make fun of Irish people? Like, I don't really have a pass. Do I get that?
Everybody can make fun of Irish people. I don't. That's never stopped anyone before, and it shouldn't. I think everybody should make fun of Irish people.
Pass at all?
No,
one
not
needs
at
a pass?
all. No, everybody should make fun of Irish people. It's the only way to be. I think we're one of the very few peoples who actually, no matter how hard you try to make fun of us, we'll make even more fun of ourselves, and we will actually very much see. Irish people love shit talking and like trash talking. Irish people love it. So if you make fun of Irish people, oh my god, you are gonna be like a hero here. You will be everybody's best friend. Everybody will be buying you drinks. I swear to God, you'll have such a good time.
So, for example, could I suggest a podcast topic for you about why it was? If you could talk about why it was so hard for the Irish to figure out who the bad guy was in World War II.
What's the title? Oh, God. Oh, that is the title? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, examining the neutrality, because I guess it was hard to figure out which side to be on. Oh, man.
Well, we didn't know which way the dice was going to roll at the end of the day. So, we didn't want to make any mistakes. No, that was actually, I know this whole story you're talking about. Eamon de Valera, who was the Taoiseach Prime Minister. He was not a very good person. I guess I'll leave it that. I'll say it that way. A lot of people hate him, and I'm one of those people who hates him. He was a real words I can't say right now.
All right. Well, Matt.
Oh, and we've got an episode chat. Charles Kahn, the meme lord, posting the help wanted, no Irish need apply sign.
Oh, that's right.
You should have posted that before we started the podcast, and then we could have avoided this whole mess.
Matt, you want to hit some of the questions for Mike from our patrons?
Yeah, we got a few real good ones. And the first one is a quickie from Ducky. Ducky wants to know what's the one case that has stood out? What's the most bizarre thing? There's got to be one that just stands out a little bit or gets to you a little bit. Is there something?
Well, one of those stories is probably one I already talked about, which was the woman who killed her husband and then herself and blamed the murder-suicide on the person who was about to catch them. That was really, really weird. Another wild one I talked about before on the channel was a guy wanted his wife gone for what else? But life insurance. Come on, baby. Life insurance time. So he decided, he had this real long, drawn out, and I'm talking years long plot where he was going to convince his friend to murder his wife. And he did that now this guy, he had served I think he'd served in the Marines or in the military anyway. And so he made friends with this guy who, as I said, would be his friend. And he would tell these like wild stories of like, yeah, I was in the Marines or the Army or something. And then, I was in the CIA. And then I got contracted by the IRA, the terrorist group, the IRA. And he became a hitman. Now, it was all bullshit, but he was telling the story to this guy who believed him. He literally believed this guy was like Agent 47, world of assassination, that he would go around, killing people for money. And then after a while, he was like, you know what? We think you got what it takes. You want in, on this guy, to join the world of assassination. He successfully managed to, quote unquote, like indoctrinate him into this conspiratorial world of terrorist assassins. And he killed his wife for him. That was a really, really crazy story where he invented this whole dark web hitman, literally like something out of a video game or a movie or something. And it worked. This guy really did believe he was a hitman who had to kill his friend's wife, and he went and he did it. So that was definitely one of those like real batshit stories of like what is going on here. That was a good one. That was dinging.
Well, we're going to stick on the story questions here. One is, it's from Jeff Strife, who we mentioned at the top of the show. Was there a story that you were not able to finish? that you started working on, and it was either too dark for you or the channel, just too messed up? Have you hit any of that?
Yeah, just a few. Usually ones involving children are very hard to do, and I usually kind of try and avoid it if I can. Like, unless it's a really, like, kind of, I guess, compelling story. I mean, just kind of weird to say, but yeah, I usually try and avoid telling ones that involve children because it's just so dark. But another story which people keep asking me to cover, and I'm kind of refusing to cover it. It's a story of, oh man, what's their names? It must be like my most requested story, but I'm just refusing to do it. It was a story of Shannon Christian and Christopher Newsom. Now, their story is honestly the most horrific thing I've ever heard in my life. I kind of don't even want to tell you what happened to them, but they were kidnapped and very bad things happened to them. Like, there's a Wikipedia. You can just read the Wikipedia of the ordeal they went through. It's... I don't know how you could tell the story with it, like being a ghoul or something. It's that's definitely a story I could never ever tell. It's very, very graphic and disturbing what happened to these two people. So that's that kind of stories, I guess. Like, when it comes to telling true crime stories, it's not the gruesomeness or the violence that interests me at all. It's always like, oh my God, this is just a batshit plot. You know what I mean? This is just an insane story. And I guess, somebody died. Like, I love telling stories. I've told a couple are like these stories where people fake their own kidnapping. I think they're like the most interesting stories of all, when people do that kind of stuff. But yeah, that there's definitely a good few stories out there which get into the gruesome side way too heavily that I just, I'm good. Thanks. Kind of way.
Yeah, and it seems like if you couldn't tell it fully, you wouldn't be able to do it justice at all. Like, it wouldn't be very interesting.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It's like if I'm going to shy away from kind of what makes the story, there's no point in telling it, I guess, to begin with.
Yeah. Well, the next one is from Jeff's wife, because she requested through Jeff that you be on the show a very, very, very long time ago.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
And I remember it so distinctly. And I know that she's just a diehard listener of that chapter. So this one comes from the Strife wife.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna. You see what I did there?
That's pretty good.
Genius.
Pretty clever.
How'd you come up with that, dude? That was amazing.
It's good.
This is why I make seven figures.
You should write it down.
It's about any topics that you've not only found really interesting, but have you gotten super wrapped up in one? Like, I don't want to say to an unhealthy degree, but like, have you become obsessed with any topics because they're so interesting?
That's a really, really good question. Damn, actually, man, I would like to think about that one. There was a topic I did a while ago. It was about like reptilians, and it was about this woman named Sherry Shriner, who ran this weird cult from her radio station, where she would, she had this public radio station. She posts videos on YouTube. Like, she's dead now. This wasn't even that long ago, but, she would talk about the reptoids are coming and they're going to, take over the usual conspiracy, the check, tick the box of conspiracy theories of like, the reptoids are coming, all the government are reptoids, they're going to take over, blah, 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 blah. That was definitely a story. And, she had her websites and she would sell orgones, which are like the most batshit things I've ever heard of. The orgones would keep the reptilians away from you, the vampire reptilians away from you. It was literally just like hardened resin, with like copper inside or something. And you could buy these from her. And she sold them pretty good value. I mean, honestly, you'd be kind of stupid if you didn't buy them, if you ask me. And you put them around your house and they'd keep the vampire reptilians away from you. And she would have orgone blasters, so she could vaporize the angel vampire reptilians. I can't even remember what words I'm saying now. This is how insane her story was. But anyway, her story led to, her gaining this cult and this following. And eventually, one person believed in the reptoids so much that he kind of forced his girlfriend to murder him because he was exiled from the cults because they thought that she was a reptilian. Very, very bizarre story, but those kind of cult things, definitely are ones that was a story that totally like, wrapped me in. I'm sure there's like so many other stories, and so many other topics that have like enthralled me. I just honestly off the top of my head, you're putting me on the freaking spot, man. I'm trying to think of a good answer and I can't, but that's one that's like off the dome.
That's just straight weird.
It seems fun
that's
though
just
to start a cult, doesn't it? I mean, it seems like a lot of work, but like, man, just having the liberty to be like, yeah, you know what? There are these reptilians, and in order to stave them off, you have to buy my Orco, and I just make that at home in my basement, and it's like $12.99 per pound of Orco, and it's earwax and dice smashed together with a little bit of toothpaste, and you just wear it in like a satchel around your neck. Like that does not sound like a little bit of fun? Until you get murdered by somebody because they think that you are a reptoid. Like the ending is kind of a bummer. But up until that point, ride is, man, that seems like a good way to go.
It is, absolutely. I mean, come on, it doesn't get any better than that, right? But maybe.
Well, we're gonna go from the weirdest possible story to a question from Jen that brings together a lot of the things that we've talked about here, and it's whether you think there are individual or societal effects of the popularity of true crime and the podcasts and the Netflix and all that stuff. Is it having an impact on things like social trust, on mental health, on attitudes regarding police and the rule of law? What do you think the effects are now that we're several years into the throes of this being almost dominant on every platform? I
think that's a really interesting question. And honestly, I would leave that to be answered by much smarter people. But one way I would look at that is that true crime is like almost a symptom rather than a cause, maybe, of this issue. In that I feel like, especially since COVID, people and like just the way the world is nowadays, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better, like anxieties and people's worries and fears are just higher than they ever have been before. I don't know if that's right or not, but it feels like it is. Like, the things people are going through, the worries they have about the future, about the economy, about all of these things, war, that kind of stuff. I kind of feel like true crime, popularity of true crime is kind of a spin-off of that. It's like, it's almost like, it's showing how people are feeling by the content they consume, and the more they consume it, the more popular it gets. That's how I would look at it.
So it's more of a reflection of all these other things as opposed to driving any anxieties in itself.
Hey, I told you a smarter person would have. Yeah, exactly. Honestly, that's how I would kind of think. I mean, that's just my opinion. But that's how I've kind of feel about it, and how I've kind of noticed it is, it's a reflection of the worries people have. It's coming out in the content they consume. And that's why these stories of murder and plots and XYZ, that's why they're so popular at the moment, and have been for the last couple of years, because of these words there.
I think of the South Park episode where they talk about murder porn.
Yeah.
And that is a weird phenomenon that, I know a bunch of people who kind of have that attitude toward crime stuff where it's like fun and exciting to them. And I've loaded up podcasts that are suggested to me on Amazon, iTunes, etc., based on me listening to things like Criminal. Excuse me. And topically, in terms of content, they're fine, but the tone is really off-putting to me, where the host is too excited for something awful. And I listened to one a podcast. A woman was just almost like celebrating this thing that at the base was horrific, and that was a weird feeling to me, because I thought, have we hit a point where this is like Hunger Games style entertainment? Is that just this one podcast? Is this something that's increasingly happening? I see some memes on Twitter about this, making fun of those types of hosts. And I wanted to kind of extend Jen's question on that and say, is that level of it reflection? Yeah, and she adds in the episode chat right now that it feels like a very weird version of disaster tourism. That's a good way to put it. Is there a strain of this that is unhealthy?
I think so. And I think what you're saying is absolutely true. Sometimes even I worry that, like, sometimes I have to, like, worry that I hope I'm not coming off like that sometimes either. Because, you always have to remember, like, these are real people. These are really things that happen. This could have happened to your sister, your brother, your wife, your husband, your whatever. Which always has to be at the heart of these stories, is that these are real stories. I feel like, it just has become something which was, 10, 20 years ago told in these very serious documentaries and talked about in these very serious ways, but because it's just becoming more and more of entertainment, it does turn into, happy sprinkle time. And then you see even not just talking about true crime and how crime is viewed generally, like, how many crime shows, sitcoms are about crime, coming out nowadays as well. It is something that definitely people need to be aware of. And especially me as a creator in this, genre definitely needs to be cognizant of that. We live in interesting times, but, should never, I guess, lose sight of, that these are real things that really did happen to people. It's not, it's not just a fun story, a wacky story. Oh my God, can you believe it? It's like, no, this is real shit. Like, it's like telling whatever.
This same phenomena happens in a much less serious domain, but it's the same type of scenario in which people disassociate their entertainment from real human beings. All right. Sorry, that was so conceptual. I'll give you my example now. Fantasy football. So there are the people who play a subset of human beings who play fantasy football treat these football players like garbage, and if like this running back or whatever fails to score a touchdown so that Joey Baloney in Brooklyn loses his fantasy football pool that week or whatever and loses money on it, they'll send death threats and stuff to these guys. It's really serious, and it's really disturbing, and it's really disgusting. Yeah, where these like fantasy football players, people will send like death threats and horrible messages to these players and their families sometimes too. Wow, where it's like, this guy's a piece of garbage. He should kill himself. It's like, okay, maybe take a step back here and recognize that this is a human being. Yeah, they're trying their best. They don't know you and also don't owe you anything. Like, there are a lot of steps going wrong in the pathway here between, like, I'm mad that Saquon Barkley didn't score 3 touchdowns, so I'm going to send him a death threat. This is bad. It's like the same things you've seen there recently with, I'm sure you guys heard about the University of Iowa murders, or University of Idaho murders. Oh, yeah. Like the armchair detectives who were, doxing people who were involved, families, sending out death threats. There was that insane, like, what was it? She was a psychic who was accusing one of the professors who worked at the university of being responsible for killing these 4 students. And she got cease and desist letters. She kept making like TikToks accusing this professor. And so now she's taking the professors, like, obviously the guy who did it is actually caught. Now the professor is taking this like TikTok idiot to court. So you definitely do have that. Yeah. Good. Oh yeah. 100%. It was the same recently with, there was a story, I think it was in the UK, of this woman, Nicola Bully, I think her name was, who went for a walk and she disappeared. Now her body was actually just found recently, like I think it was yesterday or the day before, and I think she'd fallen into the river and she had drowned. But until then, it was a huge whodunit with all these sleuths going to this town in England trying to solve the case. You know what I mean? And like they were even breaking into houses in this like village in the middle of nowhere, England, to try looking for suspects, like getting at their little red string and a map and that kind of stuff. Like this bizarre bullshit, but they think that they're like vigilante detectives who are going to solve this case. That's something I really, really always want to avoid for sure, is when I'm making videos, is getting into like this speculative stuff, especially about these unsolved cases, because it is kind of sickening how people's names can be dragged through the mud for sure. Yeah, this is why we're reopening the mines and we're sending all of these people back to work. We'll give them each a pickaxe and they just need to learn to coal. Everyone is going to learn to coal so they can stop doing things like this. Look, Mike, this has been great, but I have one more question for you before we let you go.
Shoot.
It's a question we'd like to end on with all of our guests, and that is, what makes an interesting person?
Man, what makes an interesting person? That's a very hard question because I'm sure it's completely subjective to everybody, but I guess somebody who is willing to share their experiences with you. That's the number one thing I always look at. One of my favorite things wherever I go to a city is always meeting new people, which you would usually do at a pub, and just shooting shit, telling stories, telling things their experiences, you telling your experiences, them telling you their experiences, never even exchanging names or numbers or any bullshit, just two random people talking about the stuff they've been up to. That's to me, that's what makes an interesting person. Somebody willing to share their experiences with you.
I like it. It's a good place to start. It's hard to be interesting if you won't share what makes you interesting with somebody else.
God damn, that was a terrible answer. Oh no.
That's a hard bar to clear if you're just going to keep all the interesting stuff to yourself. Well, you're not keeping all the interesting stuff to yourself. You have a great YouTube channel. You have a brand new podcast, both called That Chapter. So everyone, please go check out That Chapter, whether you're a podcast listener or a hardcore YouTuber and you need something to watch during your extended lunch break. Some of the videos get kind of long, so maybe you can chop them up over the course of a couple of lunch breaks. But this was a long time coming. Mike, thank you so much for entering the Create Unknown and spending some time with us.
Thanks for having me, guys. This was awesome. It was a pleasure to hang out with you both and shoot the shit. This was great.
All right. Well, we'll see you in a pub at some point in Ireland. I'm sure we'll share some interesting stories, especially now that I have my potato pass. Oh, everybody
Amazing.
has it.
Yeah.
So
I'm giving everybody listening a blanket potato pass.
Great. We'll end on that. We'll see you next week, and we'll see you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We make this show with the support of our patrons. 100% of that goes directly to keeping episodes going every week, and the recent support has been amazing. Sidpoke, NRM, Venture Addicts, Weezergood, you all really do make this show happen. Thank you to the Tots and Dumpster crew, old and new, who save tiny little lives every month. Thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Clemente de los Santos, Dan the Latch, Demetrius Andrews, Erica, Farrakhan, Jen Mefasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Monahim, Natsu, Heavy Peddler, Risebread, Ryan Kinder, Samuel Manser, Sean S., Sean Malone, and Tom Videoger. And a tremendous shout out to our elite baby gang commanders: Atrocious Guff, Kat, Dojangles, Graham Robertson, James Gallagher, Jeff Davis, Orange Vanilla Coke, Patrick Pister, TCU's personal pilot, Andy, Ryan Carroll, Baseweight, Vintos, Yeetus Deletus, Jonas Walter, Nathan Robinson, Jelksies, and of course, Trevstead. You are the elite. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer-editor Ben Webster, Minecraft mogul Laterman, Discord kitten wrangler Conrad, and producer emeritus Dan Yoshua. Thanks to Baseweight for use of Created in the Unknown for the opening theme. Thanks to Electro Voice for giving us mics to sound good on top of it. And a special thanks to Main Gear for powering all of our PC endeavors. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.